The young man, at just 25 years old, currently works as a junior sous chef at a prestigious restaurant. Despite his youth, he has developed impressive culinary skills and harbors a deep passion for preparing delicious, nutritious, and visually appealing dishes. For him, cooking isn't merely a profession, it's a profound source of joy and inspiration in his daily life. However, his personal experience doesn't include the stresses of raising young children or addressing family nutritional concerns, especially those involving reluctant young eaters. Being single and childless, he hasn't yet faced the parental anxiety associated with children stubbornly refusing to eat their greens. His older sister, on the other hand, at 37, is a mother of 3 young children, all under the age of 10. Given the significant age gap between them, the young chef always maintains a deep respect and special affection for his sister. Therefore, when she asked him to look after her children for a few days, he accepted the request enthusiastically, seeing it as an exciting opportunity to bond with his nieces and nephews. These 3 young children were notoriously picky eaters, frequently leaving their parents feeling frustrated and helpless. Family meals often concluded with the children barely touching their food, especially vegetables or anything that didn't appeal to them. Despite his sister and brother-in-law employing every possible strategy, from gentle persuasion to strict discipline, nothing seemed to yield lasting results. Although his time caring for the children was brief, the young chef quickly noticed the extent of this issue and resolved to apply his culinary expertise to tackle it. What initially seemed like a straightforward babysitting task evolved into a profound opportunity to demonstrate his skills and help his nieces and nephews transform their eating habits in ways his sister never imagined possible. Over 3 days, he quietly experimented with clever and subtle cooking methods. He finely blended vegetables, carefully incorporating them into the children's favorite dishes in such a way that the vegetables were virtually undetectable. He also took great care in presenting these dishes attractively or creatively disguising vegetables, ensuring the children never noticed anything unusual. Remarkably, his nieces and nephews ate enthusiastically, finishing every bite without complaints. Emboldened by his initial success, on the final day, he took a more daring approach, openly including vegetables in the dishes, but presenting them in such imaginative and intriguing ways that they piqued the children's curiosity. Instead of rejection, this method sparked excitement and engagement, and the children willingly ate vegetables they'd previously resisted. What began as a short-term responsibility to care for his sister's children quickly turned into an unexpectedly fulfilling achievement. He felt immense pride in his ability to address a problem that had long troubled his family. However, this newfound success unintentionally created deeper familial tensions. His sister, witnessing the remarkable shift in her children's eating habits, began setting higher expectations of him, implicitly assuming he could regularly replicate these results. This unexpected dynamic introduced a profound question into their family dialogue. Should family responsibility always be viewed as an unlimited obligation, or are there important boundaries that must be openly recognized and respected? As he stood at this crossroads, the young chef pondered deeply about the delicate balance between supporting family members and safeguarding his personal boundaries and career ambitions. Indeed, this situation highlighted the broader complexity surrounding familial expectations and individual limitations. While he was thrilled to use his culinary talents to benefit his family, the emerging pressure from his sister made him contemplate the importance of clear boundaries and mutual understanding within family relationships. Ultimately, the experience taught him valuable lessons beyond culinary creativity, about the depth of family dynamics, personal responsibility, and the importance of setting and communicating healthy boundaries. It was an unexpected journey from casual caregiving to deep reflection on the nuanced responsibilities that accompany family ties. The issue of the 3 children's eating habits became the focal point of the story, not only because it had been causing headaches for his sister and brother-in-law for a long time, but also because the young chef had inadvertently discovered the key to changing their behavior within just 3 short days. Before his intervention, mealtimes at his sister's house had always been like silent yet persistent battles, where victory usually leaned toward the 3 children. They had become experts at meticulously selecting what they liked, usually meat, rice, potatoes, or pasta, while completely ignoring vegetables, sauces, or any dishes with textures or flavors unfamiliar or unappealing to them. This situation had persisted for so long that his sister and brother-in-law were nearly desperate. They had tried everything from gentle coaxing and rewards to stricter methods, such as withholding favorite foods if the children refused to try vegetables. But every single approach failed. His nieces and nephew were stubborn enough to completely refuse eating vegetables, even if it meant going hungry until the next meal. However, during the brief 3-day period when the younger brother, a creative young chef, was tasked with taking care of his nieces and nephew, he realized that the real issue wasn't about forcing them, but rather about the presentation and preparation of the food. Drawing on his culinary expertise, he knew that the key to getting children to eat vegetables wasn't through coercion, but by making the children willingly and joyfully engage with the food. He decided to implement 3 distinct strategies, one for each day. On the first day, he applied a subtle yet clever technique, blending vegetables and integrating them seamlessly into the children's favorite dishes, such as spaghetti, fried rice, and chicken soup. Although this method wasn't entirely new, his skill as a professional chef allowed him to harmonize the flavors and textures so effectively that the vegetables became practically undetectable. The children happily ate their meals, completely unaware that they had just consumed a significant amount of nutrients from vegetables they usually rejected. On the second day, instead of entirely hiding the vegetables, he subtly disguised them by creatively altering their preparation and presentation. For example, carrots were finely chopped and coated in a crispy batter, or broccoli was transformed into crunchy tempura bites, sparking curiosity among the children. The appealing and novel flavors, vibrant colors, and varied textures encouraged the kids to experiment willingly, quickly finishing their plates without complaint. On the final day, confident from his initial successes, he boldly chose to present vegetables openly, relying on his exceptional creativity to arrange the dishes beautifully and intriguingly, far different from the meals his sister typically prepared. The novelty and sensory appeal of these presentations helped the children overcome their usual aversions. They willingly tasted the vegetables and even expressed excitement at exploring these new flavors. However, the overwhelming success unexpectedly created a new challenge. His effortless ability to resolve a long-standing issue inadvertently became a heavier burden in his sister's eyes. She started to perceive his simple solution not just as a fortunate discovery, but as a new, larger responsibility that she would now have to maintain without his culinary skills. In that moment, he realized something profound. What he initially saw as an uncomplicated, practical solution had unintentionally become the beginning of a much greater conflict waiting ahead. The young chef's initial success in encouraging his 3 nieces and nephews to adopt healthier eating habits rather than bringing lasting joy, swiftly became the starting point for a new and complicated conflict between him and his older sister. When the sister returned home to resume care of her children, she quickly discovered that the effective methods her brother employed were surprisingly difficult for her to replicate. Determined, she diligently attempted to recreate his meals, precisely following his recipes, using identical ingredients, and even copying his presentation techniques exactly. Despite her best efforts, however, the results fell far short of expectations. The children, who had eagerly and happily eaten the food prepared by their uncle, reverted back to their old habits, once again stubbornly and almost entirely rejecting vegetables. Confused and frustrated by her own failure, the sister sought her brother's help again. This time, however, her request shifted from a temporary favor to a long-term, continuous obligation. She asked him to prepare daily meals for her children to maintain the healthy eating habits he'd successfully established. From her perspective, this solution was perfect. It leveraged her brother's unique talent and skills and permanently solved a nutritional dilemma that had plagued her for years. She believed that if her brother genuinely cared for his nieces and nephews and was concerned for their health, this arrangement would be a wonderful opportunity for him to demonstrate his familial affection and sense of responsibility clearly and tangibly. What the sister failed to fully recognize, though, was the immense burden and pressure this request placed upon her brother. Preparing daily meals for 3 children, though seemingly simple on the surface, represented a monumental responsibility. requiring not just culinary skill but substantial daily time, the cost of food, and significant effort. Inadvertently, her request transformed what was initially a kind-hearted gesture into a mandatory job, a long-term responsibility that extended far beyond typical family support and cooperation. Consequently, the brother, despite deeply loving his nieces and nephews and willingly offering occasional help, found himself increasingly uncomfortable. He began to see that his generosity had unintentionally morphed into a burden that he could not comfortably shoulder, especially as his sister began to treat this support as an inherent obligation. The moment he hesitated before his sister's request was the moment he clearly understood the delicate and fragile nature of the relationship between voluntary help born of love and compulsory duty. What initially seemed a straightforward success story, his achievement in positively influencing the children's eating habits, unexpectedly became a source of internal conflict. The chef was now grappling with questions that reached far deeper than mere culinary technique. He was confronting the challenging boundaries between familial affection, personal limits, and perceived obligation. His hesitation underscored an essential realization that kindness could swiftly become expectation, that generosity could be misinterpreted as ongoing duty, and that the complex interplay between family bonds and individual boundaries was delicate and easily strained. The narrative thus expanded into a deeper exploration of familial relationships, highlighting how acts of kindness, if not carefully navigated, can inadvertently lead to misunderstandings and unrealistic expectations. This new conflict between brother and sister illuminated the thin and often overlooked line separating willing assistance from enforced responsibility. The young chef found himself caught between his sincere love for his family and the very real personal costs of fulfilling his sister's expectations. Ultimately, his success in fostering healthier eating for his nieces and nephews, instead of bringing sustained happiness, unveiled complex dynamics within the family structure, forcing both siblings to reconsider their perspectives on duty, love, and mutual support. Through this emerging conflict, both the chef and his sister faced the difficult task of balancing their familial affection with personal boundaries, leading them to deeper reflections about the intricate nature of family obligations and the importance of maintaining healthy emotional and practical limits. When the older sister made the request for her younger brother to prepare daily meals for her 3 children, she unintentionally touched upon a sensitive point within their sibling relationship. What initially appeared as a heartfelt and affectionate suggestion actually implied placing a long-term responsibility onto her brother, one that exceeded both his abilities and personal limits. This became even clearer when the younger brother directly addressed the issue of financial support, as providing daily meals for 3 children was more complicated than just regular cooking. It required significant time, considerable effort, and most notably, substantial financial resources. Faced with her brother's realistic and candid response, the sister reacted in a manner that was both surprising and hurtful. She outright rejected the idea of offering additional payment, arguing that this was not a business arrangement or a service to be hired, but rather an inherent responsibility of an uncle toward his nephews and nieces. In her view, the investment of his time and skills to ensure the children ate healthier meals should be seen purely as an expression of familial love, entirely unrelated to money or personal benefit. Moreover, she cleverly leveraged their familial bonds to exert emotional pressure, implying this was the moment her brother could demonstrate his sincere commitment to the family and simultaneously showcase his exceptional culinary talents. However, the brother did not perceive the issue as simplistically as she did. As a professional chef, he fully understood that what was being asked of him went far beyond merely preparing a few dishes. It involved his specialized knowledge, considerable preparation time, ingredient shopping, and sophisticated culinary techniques. The sister's request, although initially coming from a place of good intention, inadvertently made him feel as though his generosity and professional skills were being exploited. He was acutely aware that agreeing to this arrangement without a fair and clear understanding regarding costs and time commitment would inevitably trap him in a cycle with no defined boundaries or exit. More significantly, the sister's refusal to acknowledge his legitimate concerns, combined with her leveraging family ties to impose this responsibility, left him feeling stripped of his autonomy. This internal conflict deeply troubled him, placing him in a profound emotional dilemma. He genuinely wanted to preserve family harmony and affection, yet he could not easily dismiss his personal boundaries or professional principles. Clearly, his sister had failed to recognize that imposing kindness and familial obligations in such a manner does not enhance familial bonds, but rather strains them, making their relationship more vulnerable to tension and misunderstandings than ever before. What began as a seemingly casual conversation had suddenly turned into a complicated ethical and emotional predicament. The sister, perhaps inadvertently, had undervalued and overlooked the true worth of her brother's labor and professional expertise. In contrast, the brother increasingly felt manipulated and taken advantage of, hidden beneath the guise of familial love and duty, a situation he never anticipated confronting. This incident underscores a deeper issue about expectations within familial relationships, especially when professional skills are involved. It challenges the assumption that family members should naturally sacrifice their boundaries and personal needs for the sake of perceived familial duty. While the sister likely believed her request was a harmless or even flattering acknowledgement of her brother's talents, she failed to see how such expectations could impose significant burdens. Ultimately, the situation highlights the crucial importance of clear communication and mutual respect, even or perhaps especially in family matters. The sister's assumption that familial bonds automatically equated to limitless generosity led to unintended emotional harm, whereas the brother's valid concerns about fairness and boundaries were mistakenly interpreted as selfishness or insensitivity. Both sides found themselves grappling with unresolved feelings and misaligned expectations, illustrating how easy it can be for familial interactions to become entangled with complex emotional and ethical dilemmas. The key takeaway is that genuine family relationships thrive best when built on respect, understanding, and clearly communicated expectations rather than assumptions or emotional obligations alone. After the sister firmly insisted that her brother should use his cooking skills to help care for her children without needing any discussion about compensation or personal benefit, the situation grew increasingly tense. The brother felt immense pressure as he found himself forced to choose between family bonds and his own personal interests. To him, this was not merely an issue of money or responsibility, it was fundamentally about the boundaries of familial affection and respect for personal limits. He sensed that his sister either truly did not understand or was deliberately choosing not to recognize that the work he had done went beyond simple acts of love. It was an investment of considerable skill, experience, time, and effort. His sister's refusal to offer compensation and her use of family as justification to pressure him into continuing this arrangement made him feel exploited under the guise of familial duty. Moreover, it left him deeply hurt and profoundly disappointed. From the brother's perspective, this demand was excessive and represented a disregard for the value of his labor and effort, regardless of the familial relationship. Conversely, the sister viewed her brother's stance as selfish and even accused him of being irresponsible as a brother and uncle. She exerted emotional pressure, highlighting his supposed obligations toward his nieces and nephews, attempting to coerce him into accepting this new responsibility. In her eyes, if he declined, it equated to rejecting the opportunity to demonstrate familial affection, concern for health, nutrition, and the future well-being of her children. This harsh judgment seemed both unfair and unreasonable, especially since he had never previously refused to help the family. In fact, he had enthusiastically cared for the children whenever asked. However, once this voluntary assistance was transformed into a forced obligation, he felt compelled to speak up in his own defense. The saddest consequence of this situation was the growing strain between brother and sister, eroding the comfort and closeness they once shared. The brother felt deeply wounded by his sister's apparent unwillingness to understand, respect, and acknowledge the effort he had invested, while the sister was frustrated and angered by not achieving the outcome she desired. The conflict intensified, leading to the difficult, unsettling question: was the brother truly being selfish by refusing to care for his sister's children in the way she insisted upon? Or was it, in fact, the sister who erred by failing to recognize the necessary boundaries and respect crucial in maintaining healthy family relationships? This very question haunted the brother deeply, forcing him to grapple with complicated feelings of self-doubt. He began to question himself intensely, wondering if he truly was acting selfishly or if he was merely striving to protect his own reasonable interests. The weight of this self-inquiry burdened him greatly, adding layers of anxiety and confusion to an already painful situation. What intensified his emotional turmoil was the stark realization that family, a source of comfort and unconditional support, had become the source of his distress. He pondered whether setting boundaries was inherently wrong when dealing with close relatives, or if his sister's expectation that family members must sacrifice personal needs without question was fundamentally flawed. This internal debate became a constant emotional tug-of-war. He also considered the broader implications of his actions. If he yielded completely to his sister's demands without asserting his needs, it would establish a precedent that his labor, skills, and well-being were always secondary, continually taken for granted under the umbrella of familial duty. Conversely, firmly refusing her demands risked alienating him further from the family he cherished deeply. This complex dilemma placed him at the crossroads of preserving his self-respect or preserving family harmony. Ultimately, the situation forced him to confront profound questions about the essence of familial love, obligation, and personal autonomy. It pushed him into a space of deep introspection, compelling him to carefully reevaluate his perceptions of family roles, mutual respect, and the acceptable limits of sacrifice. The struggle within him was not simply about the immediate disagreement with his sister, but rather about understanding the balance between compassion, duty, and self-respect. It was this nuanced, troubling introspection that left him profoundly unsettled, grappling with questions far more profound than the immediate circumstances.